The black box started playing by itself at 3:14 in the morning. Gerald Winters, a senior aviation archivist with 28 years of experience at the Naval Aviation Museum in Pensacola, was the only person in the climate-controlled storage facility when he heard it. He had been cataloging World War II-era flight equipment, working late to finish inventory reports before the annual audit. The building was silent except for the hum of dehumidifiers and the occasional creak of metal shelving. Then, from somewhere deep in the restricted archives section, came a sound he would later describe as impossible, a voice, static, the unmistakable crackle of a 1940s-era radio transmission bleeding through decades of silence. Before we go deeper, make sure to subscribe now. This channel exposes aviation mysteries and forbidden reports the industry tries to hide. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next investigation. Winters moved toward the sound with his flashlight, cutting through rows of storage containers marked with faded military designations. His hands were shaking. The voice grew louder as he approached a steel cabinet labeled FT-19/classified. Inside, behind a layer of protective foam and sealed in a moisture-proof container, sat a device that should not exist. Flight 19 never had black box recording equipment. The technology wasn't standard on Navy torpedo bombers in 1945. The Grumman TBM Avenger aircraft that vanished over the Bermuda Triangle on December 5th of that year carried basic radio transmitters, nothing more. No cockpit voice recorders, no flight data recorders. Nothing that could preserve sound across 80 years. Yet the device was playing. The small speaker embedded in its corroded metal housing emitted words in a male voice strained with confusion and fear. Winters reached for his phone to call security, but something made him stop. Things that matched no official record. Things that had never been in any Navy report or declassified document. He pressed record on his phone and listened. The transmission was fragments at first, broken syllables and static bursts. Then clarity emerged, like something surfacing from deep water. A man identifying himself as Lieutenant Charles Taylor, the flight leader of Flight 19, was speaking to his squadron. But these were not the transmissions documented by Fort Lauderdale Naval Air Station. These came after the final logged contact at 1804 hours. After the moment when, according to every historical account, the 5 aircraft ran out of fuel and disappeared into the Atlantic. Taylor's voice in this recording was different, not confused, not panicked, calm, almost detached. He was describing something in the water below them, something vast and circular that glowed with a blue-white phosphorescence bright enough to illuminate the cockpits. He said the compasses were spinning counterclockwise, all of them, in perfect synchronization. He said the ocean's surface looked like glass, completely smooth despite the wind, and that the stars overhead had arranged themselves into patterns he didn't recognize. Then he said something that made Winters drop his phone. It's opening. The recording quality was too good. That was the first thing Winters noticed once he recovered the phone and began analyzing the audio. 1940s radio equipment produced a specific type of distortion, a characteristic signature from vacuum tube amplification and analog transmission. This recording had none of that. The voice was clear, too clear, almost as if it had been recorded yesterday with modern equipment, then artificially degraded just enough to seem plausible. But that made no sense. The device itself was genuine military hardware from the correct era. He verified the serial numbers against Navy archives. It matched a batch of experimental recording units tested in late 1944 and early 1945 at the Naval Research Laboratory in Washington. Prototypes. Only 12 were ever made. All were supposed to have been destroyed after the program was canceled. Winters spent the next 6 hours transcribing the recording. He worked in complete isolation, telling no one, not even his supervisor. The content was too strange, too specific. Taylor described the glow intensifying until it became painful to look at directly. He described his co-pilot, Ensign Walter Parpart, vomiting from vertigo, even though the plane was flying level. He described the fuel gauges reading full despite having flown for over 3 hours beyond their maximum range. Most disturbing, he described the radio filling with voices that weren't on any known frequency.
aviation terminology from the jet age, weather patterns described with satellite precision, references to GPS coordinates. When dawn broke and other staff began arriving, Winters locked the recording device back in its cabinet and filed his incident report as a routine equipment malfunction. A simple case of electronic feedback, he wrote, probably caused by electromagnetic interference from a nearby radio tower. He recommended the device be moved to a different storage location and forgotten. But he kept the audio file. He copied it to 3 separate encrypted drives and hid them in different locations. Then he started researching. The official story of Flight 19 is well documented. 5 TBM Avenger torpedo bombers departed Fort Lauderdale Naval Air Station at 14:10 hours on December 5, 1945.
The mission was a routine navigation training exercise called Navigation Problem Number 1. Fly due east 56 miles to Hens and Chicken Shoals, conduct practice bombing runs, continue east another 67 miles, then turn north and fly 73 miles before turning west-southwest back to base. Total flight time, approximately 2 hours. Total distance, approximately 140 miles. All 5 aircraft were crewed by experienced pilots. Lieutenant Taylor, the flight leader, was a combat veteran with over 2,500 hours of flight time. The other pilots were students, but they were advanced trainees, not novices. The weather forecast was favorable, visibility unlimited, winds light and variable, nothing unusual, nothing dangerous. The first sign of trouble came at 15:45 hours when Fort Lauderdale Tower intercepted a transmission between Taylor and his squadron. Taylor reported both his compasses malfunctioning. He believed they were flying over the Florida Keys when they should have been over the Bahamas. He was disoriented. Over the next 3 hours, radio contact became increasingly sporadic. Taylor refused to switch to the emergency frequency. He led the flight further out to sea, thinking he was heading toward Florida. The last official transmission was logged at 1804 hours. Taylor's voice saying, "All planes close up tight will have to ditch unless landfall. When the first plane drops below 10 gallons, we all go down together." A massive search operation involving over 300 aircraft and dozens of ships found nothing. No wreckage, no oil slicks, no debris, no bodies. 5 aircraft and 14 men vanished as completely as if they had never existed. But the recording Winters found told a different story, a story that continued after the official timeline ended. At 1817 hours, according to the device's internal timestamp, Taylor transmitted again. This time, his voice carried no trace of fear. He sounded curious, almost fascinated. He described the circular glow expanding until it surrounded all 5 aircraft. He described the sensation of weightlessness, even though the altimeter showed they were still at 1,200 feet. He described looking across at the nearest plane in the formation and seeing it flicker like a mirage, solid, then transparent, then solid again. He described his instruments failing one by one: radio, compass, altimeter, airspeed indicator. Everything except the engines. The engines kept running perfectly. Winters cross-referenced the coordinates Taylor mentioned in the recording with historical navigation charts. The location was approximately 250 miles northeast of Fort Lauderdale, far beyond where the search operation concentrated. The ocean depth there exceeded 18,000 feet, deep enough to hide anything forever. But something else caught his attention. Naval records from December 5th showed unusual magnetic activity in that region. Variations in the Earth's magnetic field strong enough to interfere with compass readings. The official investigation mentioned this, but dismissed it as irrelevant. Compasses malfunction. Pilots get lost. Planes crash. Simple explanation. Except the recording suggested something else entirely. At 1829 hours, Taylor described the water below them changing. The surface began moving, not waves, not currents, a rotation. The entire visible ocean surface spinning slowly counterclockwise around the glowing center. He described foam and spray rising from the edges of the rotation, creating a mist that climbed toward the aircraft. He described the smell. That detail disturbed Winters more than anything else in the recording. How could an audio device capture smell? Yet Taylor's voice clearly stated the cockpit filled with an odor like ozone and sulfur and something else, something organic, something that reminded him of the smell of the ocean at extreme depth where no light ever penetrates. The formation began descending, not because Taylor ordered it. The aircraft were being pulled down. Taylor shouted commands to apply full throttle. The engines responded. The propellers screamed, but the altimeter kept unwinding. 1,100 feet, 1,000 feet, 900 feet. The descent was gradual but unstoppable. Taylor told his squadron to prepare for water impact. He told them to jettison the canopy latches so they could escape quickly when they hit. He told them it had been an honor to fly with them. They never hit the water. At 1,838 hours, Taylor's voice changed completely. The calmness vanished. Raw terror replaced it. He was screaming into the radio, not words. Beneath his screams, other voices filled the transmission. Multiple voices speaking simultaneously in that wrong English. Phrases like temporal displacement confirmed, and dimensional breach stabilizing, and retrieval protocol initiated. These voices had no emotion. They sounded artificial, generated, like early computer speech synthesis that wouldn't be invented for another 40 years. Then, silence. The recording device continued running. The timestamp showed 1,842 hours, then 1,843. Nothing but empty static. Winters listened to 12 minutes of absence before the next sound occurred. A single word in Taylor's voice, barely audible, drained of all energy. Where? More silence. Then footsteps. Not on metal aircraft flooring, on stone, on rock, echoing as if in a large enclosed space. Taylor's breathing was audible now, rapid and shallow. Where? He spoke again, asking where he was, asking if anyone could hear him, asking what happened to his aircraft, asking what happened to his men. No one answered. The footsteps continued. Then they stopped. Taylor made a sound that might have been a gasp or a sob. He whispered 3 words that ended the recording. "There's another me." Winters played those final seconds over and over. The audio quality remained impossibly clear. Taylor's whisper carried absolute conviction, not confusion, not madness. Simple, factual observation. He saw something, someone, himself. Then the device stopped recording. The timestamp froze at 1,857 hours, 53 minutes after the last official transmission from Flight 19. The implications were staggering. If the recording was genuine, and Winters had no evidence it wasn't, then Flight 19 didn't crash into the ocean. They went somewhere else. Somewhere the laws of physics functioned differently. Somewhere time moved incorrectly. Somewhere copies of people could exist simultaneously. But that wasn't the most disturbing part. The most disturbing part was what happened next. 3 days after Winters discovered the recording, another device activated. This one wasn't in the museum archives. It was in a private collection in Maryland, owned by a retired Navy captain named Robert Holleran, who specialized in World War II aviation artifacts. Holleran called Winters in a panic at 2 in the morning. He had a black box, same model as the one in Pensacola, same serial number sequence. It started playing by itself. Same voice, same Lieutenant Charles Taylor, but different content. This recording began at 1,915 hours, 18 minutes after the first recording ended. Taylor was no longer whispering. He was running. His breathing came in ragged gasps, punctuated by the sound of his boots striking stone. He was being chased. Something was behind him. Something that made a sound like metal scraping against metal mixed with organic breathing. Taylor was crying, begging, praying aloud to God for help. The thing was getting closer. Then Taylor fell. The impact sound was clearly audible. He scrambled to his feet, but something grabbed him. He screamed, not in pain, in absolute existential horror, the kind of sound a human makes when confronted with something that should not be possible. The scream cut off, replaced by that artificial computer voice saying, "Specimen retrieved. Consciousness transfer in progress." Then, silence. Halloran shipped the device to Winters overnight. When it arrived, Winters compared the two units side by side. They were identical. Same serial numbers, same manufacturing marks, same level of age-appropriate wear. Both were genuine. Both impossible. You cannot have two devices with the same serial number unless one is a replica, but neither showed any signs of modern manufacturing.
The metallurgy was correct for 1940s-era military specifications. The electronic components were authentic. The corrosion patterns were consistent with 80 years of aging. Winters contacted the Naval Research Laboratory and requested information about the experimental recording program from 1944. Most of the files were destroyed, they told him, standard procedure for failed projects. But they found a fragment, a single paragraph in a budget report that mentioned the program's objective. The devices were designed to continue recording after aircraft crashes. They were equipped with emergency power supplies that could function for up to 72 hours underwater. They were hardened against extreme pressures and temperatures. And they had one other feature. They were quantum entangled. Winters didn't understand the physics. The report didn't explain in detail, but the implication was clear. Each device was linked to a partner device.
Whatever one recorded, the other could theoretically receive and play back. But the technology to achieve quantum entanglement wouldn't be properly developed until the 21st century. The Navy in 1944 couldn't possibly have created such devices unless they had help, unless someone gave them the technology, unless the project's failure wasn't a failure at all, but a cover story. More devices started activating, 7 more over the next month, all from private collections or museum archives scattered across the United States, all containing fragments of recordings from Flight 19's missing time, all showing the same impossible serial number matches, all revealing pieces of a narrative that made less sense the more Winters learned. The recordings described multiple environments: stone passages, metal chambers, forests that smelled wrong, oceans that glowed in darkness, skies with too many moons. Taylor's voice appeared in all of them, but different versions. In some recordings, he sounded terrified. In others, resigned. In one, he sounded victorious, as if he had escaped something and found a way home. In another, he was laughing. Not joyful laughter, broken laughter. The sound of sanity collapsing. Other voices appeared too. The student pilots, Walter Parpart, George Devenworth, Kenneth Moore. Their voices describing the same impossible things from different perspectives. Sometimes they were together, sometimes separated. Sometimes they mentioned seeing each other but being unable to make contact, as if separated by invisible barriers. Sometimes they mentioned seeing themselves, multiple copies, some trying to escape, some attacking, some already dead. Winters assembled the recordings in chronological order based on timestamps. The timeline extended over 17 hours, from 14:10 hours on December 5th, when the flight took off, to 7:30 hours on December 6th. 17 hours during which Flight 19 existed somewhere outside normal space and time, experiencing events that should have been impossible, recorded by devices that should not exist. The final recording was different from all the others. It came from a device that appeared on Winters' doorstep with no return address and no shipping label, just a plain wooden box containing the black box unit and nothing else. When Winters played it, he heard Taylor's voice one last time. But this Taylor sounded different, older, exhausted, calm. He was narrating something that sounded like a report, a formal military debriefing. He described the events of December 5th from the perspective of someone looking back across a great distance of time. He mentioned dates far in the future, dates that hadn't happened yet when Winters listened to the recording. He mentioned technology that didn't exist. He mentioned events in world history that were still classified or unknown.
Then he said something directly to the listener. If you're hearing this, then you found the breadcrumbs. We left them intentionally. All of us, the 12 of us who came back. Not back to our time, back to the place, Earth, but wrong, always wrong. Different details, small changes. We tried to warn people, tried to leave evidence. The devices were the only things that crossed with us. Everything else got left behind. Our aircraft, our bodies, those belong to different versions now. But the devices remember. They hold the recordings from all possible timelines. Every version of December 5th, 1945. Every outcome. Every path. And they play them randomly, hoping someone will listen, someone will understand. It's still there, the thing under the ocean, still waiting, still pulling aircraft down, still taking people to the other places. It hasn't stopped. It will never stop. We're not the first. We won't be the last. But maybe if enough people know, maybe if the evidence becomes undeniable, maybe someone will figure out how to close it. The recording ended with coordinates, exact latitude and longitude numbers for a location in the Atlantic Ocean 247 miles northeast of Fort Lauderdale, the same location where Taylor first reported the circular glow. Winters checked modern maritime charts. The coordinates pointed to an area classified as a naval exclusion zone. No civilian traffic permitted. No explanation given. The designation dated back to 1946, 1 year after Flight 19 disappeared. The zone had been maintained continuously for 80 years, despite having no apparent strategic value. Deep ocean, no islands, no resources, just empty water marked as forbidden. Winters tried to publish his findings. Every aviation journal rejected the story. Too speculative, too sensational, no corroborating evidence. He tried mainstream media. They laughed. He tried academic conferences. They dismissed him as a crank. He tried the Navy directly. They confiscated his evidence, placed him on administrative leave, and threatened him with prosecution for mishandling classified materials. The devices were removed from his home and office. The audio files were deleted from every drive where he had stored them. His research notes disappeared. But he had made one additional copy, a simple analog backup. He recorded the audio to magnetic tape and buried it in a waterproof container in his backyard. When the investigation finally ended and the Navy decided not to prosecute, Winters retrieved the tape and released it online. Anonymous upload. No identifying information. Just the raw audio and a brief explanation. The files went viral for 3 days. Then they started disappearing. First from major platforms. Then from smaller sites. Then from archive services. Always the same explanation. Copyright violation. Even though no one claimed ownership. Even though there was no copyrighted content to violate. Within a week, the files were gone. But people had downloaded them. People had listened. People remembered. Strange reports started surfacing. Pilots flying over the Atlantic reported equipment malfunctions in the vicinity of those coordinates. Compasses spinning. Radios filling with voices speaking nonsense. Circular glows visible in the water at night. Coast Guard vessels reported the same phenomena. The Navy issued a statement blaming magnetic anomalies and bioluminescent algae. Natural occurrences. Nothing unusual. Nothing to investigate. But the reports continued. In 2021, a commercial airline flying from Miami to London experienced a 6-minute period of missing time over the Atlantic. The flight crew couldn't explain it. One moment they were at cruising altitude on course. The next moment they were 40 miles off course with no memory of turning. The flight data recorder showed continuous data with no gaps. But the timestamps didn't match the cockpit clock. 6 minutes simply vanished. The incident was classified as pilot error and buried in regulatory paperwork. In 2023, a private yacht crossing from the Bahamas to Bermuda reported seeing 5 World War II aircraft flying in formation at low altitude. The crew watched them for approximately 2 minutes before they descended into a glowing circular patch of ocean and vanished. Coast Guard investigation found nothing. No wreckage, no distress signals, no other witnesses.
The yacht owner was quietly advised to stop discussing the incident if he valued his maritime licenses. In 2025, a deep-sea research submarine exploring the ocean floor in the exclusion zone at a depth of 19,000 feet discovered debris. Metal fragments consistent with TBM Avenger construction. Fabric that matched Navy flight suit specifications from the 1940s. But the discovery was never announced.
The research team was immediately recalled. The submarine's data was confiscated. The crew members were required to sign non-disclosure agreements backed by national security classifications. One team member leaked photos before being detained. The images circulated online briefly before disappearing, but people saw them. People saved them. The debris field was arranged in a pattern, a perfect circle approximately 3 miles in diameter. The fragments were positioned with mathematical precision, not random crash scatter, deliberate placement. And in the exact center of the circle, the submarine's cameras captured something else, a structure, artificial, made from materials that didn't match anything in Earth's geological record. The structure was emitting light, blue-white, pulsing, the same color Taylor described in the original recording. Winters received one final message 3 months ago, an email from an anonymous sender using multiple layers of encryption. The message contained a single sentence and an attachment. The sentence read, "They're still broadcasting." The attachment was an audio file, 90 seconds long. Taylor's voice, not old, not tired, exactly as it sounded in 1945. Young, vital, clear. He was speaking directly to the listener again. "We're still here, all of us, all 14 men from Flight 19. We exist in every timeline simultaneously. Every possible version of December 5th, every outcome, every path. The thing you need to understand is that we never left. We're still flying over the Bermuda Triangle. Right now, this moment, we're still experiencing the same 3 hours over and over. The same confusion, the same terror, the same pull. But we're also here in the places where it took us, the other Earths, the wrong versions, the places where small details changed. And we're also there inside the structure, the thing at the bottom, the thing that shouldn't exist. It's using us, our consciousness, our memories, our identities. It copies us and sends the copies out into different timelines while keeping the originals trapped. It's been doing this for thousands of years, with thousands of people. We're not the first. The structure is older than human civilization, but we're the ones who left the most evidence. We're the ones who weaponized quantum entanglement before it was supposed to be invented. We're the ones who found a way to send messages back. And we're telling you this. It's getting stronger. The structure, it's pulling more people, more aircraft, more ships. The exclusion zone isn't enough anymore. The effect is spreading. Soon it will reach commercial flight paths. Soon it will be undeniable. And when that happens, the government will have to admit it exists. They'll have to admit they've known since 1945. They'll have to admit they've been studying it, feeding it, sending people into it deliberately to see what comes back. You need to be ready.
You need to know the truth before the lie becomes official. The recording ended there. Winters tried to trace the email. Impossible. The encryption was too sophisticated, military grade or beyond. He tried to verify the audio. Every analysis tool confirmed it was genuine, period-appropriate recording. No digital manipulation, no artificial generation. Real. Winters doesn't know what to believe anymore. He spent 2 years investigating Flight 19, 2 years listening to impossible recordings from devices that shouldn't exist, 2 years watching evidence appear and disappear, 2 years being followed by people who never identify themselves, 2 years receiving threats that never specify what he should stop doing. He's exhausted, he's terrified, and he's convinced Flight 19 didn't crash. They were taken, and they're trying to warn us that it's still happening. The black boxes keep activating. New ones appear every few months, always in unexpected locations. Always with fragments of the story. Always with that same impossible clarity. Winters collects them when he can, hides them when he must, shares them when possible.
He's built a network of researchers and witnesses and collectors who all understand the truth. They communicate carefully. They trust no one outside their circle. They document everything. They prepare for the day when the evidence becomes too massive to suppress. That day might be coming soon. Last week, a Delta Airlines flight from Atlanta to London reported multiple equipment failures while crossing the Atlantic. Same location, same phenomenon. Compasses spinning, radios filling with voices, circular glow in the water below. But this time, there were 300 passengers aboard, 300 witnesses, 300 people who saw the same impossible thing. The airline is calling it electromagnetic interference from a solar flare. The FAA is investigating. The Navy is silent, but the passengers are talking.
They're posting on social media. They're sharing videos taken through cabin windows. They're describing the fear, the confusion, the 6 minutes of missing time that the flight crew can't explain. They're describing how the ocean looked like glass, how the stars seemed wrong, how they felt weightless despite their seatbelts. They're describing the voice that came through the cabin speakers, a voice that wasn't the pilot or co-pilot or any crew member, a voice that sounded like it came from very far away or very deep below, a voice that said only one sentence before cutting off. We're still here. The videos are still online, for now. The posts are still circulating, for now. The questions are still being asked, for now. But Winters knows what happens next. The deletion, the suppression, the official explanation, the gradual fading of memory, until it becomes just another internet conspiracy theory that no one takes seriously. Unless enough people listen. Unless enough people remember.
Unless enough people demand answers. What would you do if you heard these recordings? What would you do if you saw the evidence? Would you dismiss it as impossible? Would you trust the official explanations? Or would you ask the harder question? The question that Winters asks himself every day. The question that keeps him awake every night. If Flight 19 is still out there, still broadcasting, still experiencing the same 3 hours across 80 years and infinite timelines, what happens when the structure decides to stop being subtle? What happens when it starts pulling aircraft from major flight paths instead of training exercises? What happens when hundreds or thousands of people vanish at once? Will we finally acknowledge what's been hiding in the Atlantic for millennia? Or will we keep pretending it's just magnetic anomalies and pilot error and coincidence? The black boxes know the answer. They've been trying to tell us for 80 years. Maybe it's time we started listening.
Do you think Flight 19 crashed like the Navy claims? Or do you believe they found something that shouldn't exist? Share your opinion in the comments and subscribe for more aviation investigations you won't see anywhere else.